Samuel Pepys had the time of his life during the Great Plague of London in 1665. You might wonder how that was. He was a man who was cautious to the extreme. He was scared of disease. Although the pages of his diary are full of his observations of women he was attracted to and who he wanted to go to bed with, he seldom did anything about his attractions. Rather, he just preferred to ogle. He was, as I said, a cautious man, one with an eye to promotion and advancement, and he would never allow his desires to interfere with his career. He wouldn't even contemplate sex with an unmarried woman in case there was an unwanted, unexplainable pregnancy. He was also constrained by fear of disease, especially of contracting syphilis or gonorrhea, sexually transmissible infections. For that reason, he shunned any contact with prostitutes, although they would have hardly been necessary considering his personal charms and his willingness to use his official position to advance the husbands of the women for whom he developed an obsession. But he was also terrified of venereal disease. He was shocked when he heard that his brother Tom was dying of the pox, and of the tales that the maid had to tell of Tom's unnatural sexual practices, of staying up all night, doing something to himself. But Tom was to assure Samuel that he didn't have the pox. So Samuel Pepys immediately went out to celebrate and ordered oysters for a celebratory dinner. However, as I said, he was cautious. So, having enjoyed his sumptuous meal, he was determined to make sure that Tom was indeed clean and called in another doctor for a second opinion, with whom he searched my brother again at his privities, where he was as clear as he was ever born. What the unfortunate Tom was actually suffering from was tuberculosis, which then was often inaccurately associated with VD. By this time, he was already unconscious and close to death. But that examination exonerated him of having the shameful disease, so distressing to the respectability of a self-made man on the rise like Pepys. So, Pepys was a man afraid of disease, but he also enjoyed the good life. As a young man, under the Commonwealth, he went out clubbing with his fellow clerks in the alehouses of the Commonwealth. And when I say clubbing, that was the word he actually used. Sounds very modern, doesn't it? But then there's something modern about Pepys, and at the same time, he was a man of his time. He enjoyed the pleasures of theatre and tavern in Restoration London, was attracted by the sophistication and easygoing morals of the Restoration court. And as I said, he was an insatiable voyeur of women. He enjoyed all the good things in life. And yet, it's surprising that during the 1665 plague, Pepys stayed in London for the whole time. The Navy Board, of which he was an official, quickly moved from the capital to the comparative safety of Greenwich in order to escape the plague. But Mr. Secretary Pepys remained in the capital at the height of the sickness. He had been afraid when he first heard tidings of plague having struck Amsterdam in 1663, and he was convinced that it would travel to London. Yet he stayed in the capital when he could easily have moved out. His diary provides a vivid picture of life at the time. He was alarmed when he saw in Drury Lane for the first time 2 or 3 houses marked with a red cross upon the doors, and "Lord have mercy upon us" yet there. He was again very alarmed when news was brought to him of a suspected plague victim among the servants of his friend George Cock, a timber merchant and navy contractor. He wrote, "Sir William Batten did tell me that Captain Cock's black was dead of the plague, and I did send to him that he would either forbear the office or forbear going to his own office." Pepys wanted to avoid catching the infection and warned others against spreading it. Even when he overheard the searchers employed to inspect and clean the houses of plague victims, he commented, "That fellow did not die of the plague." The ever-cautious Pepys was sceptical, since the man he was talking about had been ill a good while, and I'm told that his boy Jack is also ill. Now, Pepys didn't stop his usual lifestyle. He continued to ogle pretty women. He continued to enjoy good food, good wine, good ale. And he lived his life to the full in the midst of the plague. The precautions he took to safeguard his health included buying some roll tobacco to smell and chew, which took away the apprehension. And certainly in times of epidemic and pandemic, people do need something to take away what Pepys called the apprehension, the worry, the concern about what's going to happen. Well, Pepys did eventually follow the Navy Board to Greenwich in the autumn of 1665. He had the expense of moving his clerks to Greenwich to avoid the sickness in the capital, and he moved his own family a bit further out to Woolwich. Even the death from plague of his aunt and the children of his cousin did not upset him too greatly. However, as Secretary to the Naval Board, Pepys was very well aware of the great burden we have upon us at this time of the office is the providing for prisoners and sick men that are recovered. The lying before our office doors all night and all day, poor wretches. The problem for them was that having been on shore, the captains won't receive them on board. And other ships we have not to put them on, nor money to pay them off, or provide for them. God remove this difficulty. The Royal Navy had indeed taken prompt action to avoid the havoc which the Great Plague was wreaking, and which might otherwise have inflicted upon the fleet, at that time based in the Thames and manned by men from London. An attempted blockade of the Dutch coast by the English fleet in August 1665 was abandoned as a result of sickness and lack of victuals. Sick men were not allowed to remain on their ships, but were landed immediately, and not allowed to return aboard, even if they appeared to have recovered. Many captains, indeed, believed that the plague was carried in clothing, and refused to allow any new supplies of slops on board their ships. For men rounded up by the press gang, the plague could be a godsend. Any signs of plague among them, and they received their release. One man in a draft of 131 pressed men at Sheerness was found to have a rising in his groin. So nobody would take the rest of the pressed men for fear that they might be carrying their plague. And they were given their freedom to return to their homes from which they had been snatched. Meanwhile, any ships suspected of carrying the plague were quarantined. In fact, such measures had been adopted as early as November 1663. John Evelyn, the other great diary of Restoration London, requested the use of a pest ship for the quarantine of infectious sailors, of whom there were not a few. Ships would be regularly cleaned as a matter of course, and rarely came alongside the wharfs where infected rats could get aboard, which did help to reduce the spread of the plague in the Navy. And the Navy was at sea at the height of the summer epidemic. On land in the dockyards, at Greenwich, all the carpenters who had been in houses infected with the plague in August 1666 would be isolated and would remain for a fortnight's quarantine. At Portsmouth, isolated men such as these were expected to wash themselves and their clothes and burn rosin and brimstone 14 days before being admitted to the shipyard. There were similar measures in Plymouth, Greenwich, Chatham. But that was only part of Pepys' concern in that plague summer. Otherwise, he was too busy attending to his usual business and enjoying life. Indeed, afterwards, he considered that I have never lived so merrily. Besides that, I had never got so much as I have done this plague time. He was quite self-satisfied with his own prosperity, his own survival, and the fact that he'd had a good time, enjoyed himself, and made money. It's not quite the image we have of any lockdown today, or of the need for quarantine, or to just live in the time of pestilence. For Pepys, though, it was the opportunity to enjoy himself, make money, and to hell with the rest of the world.